Currently, Earth.
On February 3rd in the year 1780, in one of the most famous crimes of post-revolution America, Barnett Davenport commits a mass murder in rural Connecticut. Caleb Mallory, his wife, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandchildren all continued their eternity at the hands of their boarder, Davenport. Davenport was born in 1760 and enlisted in the American Army as a teenager and had served at Valley Forge and Fort Ticonderoga. In the waning days of the war with the British, he came to live in the Mallory household. Today, Davenport's crime might be ascribed to some type of post-war stress syndrome, but at the time, it was the source of a different sociological significance. On February 3rd, apparently unprovoked, Davenport beat Caleb Mallory. He then beat Mallory's 7-year-old grandchild with a rifle. He then attacked his daughter-in-law. Davenport then looted the home before setting it on fire and attacking 2 others. All the people attacked continued their eternity as a result. Shocking confession was the basis for much soul-searching for the fledgling nation's press. Many books were written about the crime, and the perception of the murders began to change in America. Until then, crime was most often seen as a result of common sinners losing their way. But Davenport's crimes and its portrayal to the public caused people to perceive criminals as evil and alien to the rest of society. To some degree, this view has persisted through the years. It was February 3rd in the year 1950 that Klaus Fuchs, a German-born British scientist who helped develop the atomic bomb, is arrested in Great Britain for passing top-secret information about the bomb to the Soviet Union. The arrest of Fuchs led authorities to several other individuals involved in a spy ring, culminating with the arrest of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg and their subsequent execution. Fuchs and his family fled Germany in 1933 to avoid Nazi persecution and came to Great Britain, where Fuchs earned his doctorate in physics. During World War II, British authorities were aware of the leftist leanings of both Fuchs and his father. However, Fuchs was eventually invited to participate in the British program to develop an atomic bomb, the project named Tube Alloys, because of his expertise. At some point after the project began, Soviet agents contacted Fuchs and he began to pass information about British progress to them. Late in 1943, Fuchs was among a group of British scientists brought to America to work on the Manhattan Project, the U.S. program to develop an atomic bomb. Fuchs continued his clandestine meetings with Soviet agents. When the war ended, Fuchs returned to Great Britain and continued his work on the British atomic bomb project. Fuchs' arrest in 1950 came after a routine security check of Fuchs' father, who had moved to communist East Germany in 1949. While the check was underway, British authorities received information from the American Federal Bureau of Investigation that decoded Soviet messages in their possession indicated Fuchs was a Russian spy. On February 3rd, officers from Scotland Yard arrested Fuchs and charged him with violating the Official Secrets Act. Fuchs eventually admitted his role and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. His sentence was later reduced and he was released in 1959 and spent his remaining years living with his father in East Germany. Fuchs' capture set off a chain of arrests. Harry Gold, whom Fuchs implicated as the middleman between himself and the Soviet agents, was arrested in the U.S. Gold thereupon informed on David Greenglass, one of Fuchs' co-workers on the Manhattan Project. After his apprehension, Greenglass implicated his sister-in-law and her husband, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. They were arrested in New York in July of 1950, found guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage, and they continued their eternity at Sing Sing prison in June of 1953. It was February 3rd in the year 1998 that a U.S. Marine jet flying low over the town of Cavallese in the Italian Alps severs a ski lift cable, sending a tram crashing to the ground and continuing the eternity of 20 people. Cavallese is located in the Dolomite Mountains, about 20 miles northeast of Trento, Italy. In 1976, 42 people there, including 15 children, continued their eternity when the cable holding up their ski lift car snapped. The car fell about 700 feet with its overhead assembly landing on top of it. There was only one survivor, a 14-year-old girl. On February 3rd in 1998, 20 Europeans, mostly Germans and Belgians, were taking a ski tram up the Surmis Mountain when a EA-6B Prowler, operated by the U.S. Marines, suddenly flew by. The anti-radar aircraft sliced right through the steel cable holding up the tram, and it plunged more than 250 feet to the ground. Everyone on board continued their eternity. The plane suffered minimal damage and returned to its base in Italy. The pilot, Captain Richard J. Ashby, and navigator, Captain Joseph Schweitzer, destroyed a videotape that had recorded their flight before an investigation began. Still, it was soon discovered that the plane had been flying at only 360 feet above the ground, in spite of regulations that set the minimum altitude for flights at 2,000 feet. This revelation spurred large anti-American protests in Italy. President Bill Clinton, our nation's 42nd president, apologized to the victim's family and promised compensation. But pursuant to NATO rules, the U.S. military claimed jurisdiction over the case, despite objections from Italian prosecutors. In a military court at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Ashby and Schweitzer were charged with involuntary manslaughter and negligent homicide. Their claim that their equipment had malfunctioned and that their maps had not shown the location of the ski lift. Despite Italian claims that American pilots regularly and intentionally ignored safety regulations to execute risky maneuvers, the crew was acquitted in March of 1999. Ashby and Schweitzer were court-martialed for obstruction of justice for the destruction of the videotape and dismissed from the Marines. In May of 1999, Congress failed to approve a compensation fund for the victims. Italy, however, later approved nearly $2 million in compensation per victim, and according to NATO regulations, the United States was held liable for 75% of the damages. February 3rd in 1903, Jack Johnson becomes boxing's first black heavyweight champion. It was February 3rd in 1964 that 464,000 black and Puerto Rican students boycotted New York schools. This awesome action and mission was engendered on the basis to integrate our public schools in America. On February 3rd in 1965, Geraldine McCullough wins the Widener Gold Medal. Going back about 9 years, we can't forget about Arthurine J. Lucy, who was accepted into the University of Alabama, breaking the segregation barrier. She was expelled 3 days later for her own safety. The information documented on this audio file can be verified on history.com.